Let's be real, the future of technology is coming at us faster than ever. It's everywhere, in the headlines, in our hands, in our homes. But who's stopping to ask the big, scary, important questions? One name stands out, James Hughes. What makes him so unique? Well, not only is Hughes at the cutting edge of bioethics and transhumanism, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with technology, but he's also deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy. Wait, Buddhist philosophy? In tech? Yes, you read that right. In a world obsessed with the next technological breakthrough, Hughes dares to ask questions that shake us to our core. What does it mean to be human? What happens when AI gets smart enough to think for itself? What if we could live forever? But only some of us. Hughes' genius lies in his ability to merge the ancient wisdom of Buddhism, focused on compassion, suffering, and impermanence, with the cutting-edge debates on genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and life extension. And honestly, doesn't that just blow your mind a little? How can something as old as Buddhist thought help us navigate a future full of AI and bio-enhancements? You're about to find out. Let's buckle up and explore James Hughes' world, where ancient wisdom meets futuristic technology. By the end of this, you might just be questioning everything you thought you knew about our future. The background of James Hughes, a man of two worlds. When you look at James Hughes' resume, you might do a double take. He's not your typical tech guru or bioethicist. Before he became a leading voice in transhumanism and bioethics, Hughes took a detour through the world of Buddhist monasticism. Yeah, he was an actual monk. Hughes spent time in Sri Lanka as an ordained Buddhist monk, studying the ancient teachings that focused on compassion, suffering, and the nature of the self. Imagine going from the serene, meditative life of a monk to the fast-paced, debate-filled world of bioethics and futuristic tech. Quite the leap, right? But in many ways, it wasn't a leap at all. Instead, Hughes brought the principles of Buddhism with him into his academic and ethical work. His time as a monk profoundly influenced his worldview. It's easy to see how his deep understanding of Buddhist teachings, particularly the idea of anatta, non-self, and dukkha, suffering, would later shape his ideas about personhood and consciousness, topics central to bioethics and transhumanism. You can almost hear him asking, how can we apply these timeless concepts to the modern challenges of genetic engineering and artificial intelligence? While Western philosophers often focus on individual rights and autonomy, Hughes brings something different to the table, a view of humanity as interconnected, where the well-being of all sentient beings, not just humans, matters. Transhumanism, not just sci-fi. But our future, let's face it, when most people hear the word transhumanism, they probably think of sci-fi movies with robots taking over or humans becoming immortal cyborgs. It's exciting, sure, but also a little unnerving, right? However, Hughes is here to tell us that transhumanism is more than just a sci-fi fantasy. It's something real, and it's happening right now. So, what exactly is transhumanism? Simply put, it's the idea that we can use technology to transcend the limitations of our human bodies. Want to live longer? There's tech for that. Want to boost your intelligence or physical strength? There's tech for that too. But before you get too excited or scared, Hughes offers a critical twist. Not all transhumanism is created equal. You see, some versions of transhumanism advocate for a free-for-all, where individuals have access to whatever enhancement tech they can afford, no questions asked. Others, like the bioconservatives, argue that messing with our biology is playing God and will lead to disaster. But Hughes? He walks a middle path, no surprise given his Buddhist background. He champions something called democratic transhumanism or techno-progressivism. His vision? A world where these incredible advancements in technology don't just benefit a privileged few but are made accessible to everyone, regulated carefully, and used ethically. Now, pause for a second and think, would you want the ability to live forever? Would you want to enhance your intelligence or physical abilities? Sounds cool, right? But now think of this, what if only the rich could do it? Imagine a world where the wealthy get to enhance their bodies and minds, creating a vast divide between the haves and the have-nots. Suddenly, it's not so cool anymore, is it? That's exactly the kind of future Hughes warns us about. He's not against human enhancement, far from it. But he's adamant that these advancements need to be regulated, so they don't exacerbate social inequalities or create new forms of suffering. It's about fairness, compassion, and ensuring that technology is used for the greater good. Buddhist ethics, the compass for a tech-driven future. At the heart of Hughes' work is this fascinating blend of Buddhist ethics and modern bioethics. You might be wondering, what does Buddhism have to do with AI, genetic engineering, or life extension? More than you might think, Buddhist ethics revolve around compassion, karu, and the alleviation of suffering. Unlike many Western ethical frameworks, which often focus on the individual and their rights, Buddhism teaches us that all life is interconnected. Our actions affect not only ourselves but everyone around us. Hughes sees this as a critical lens through which to view the future of technology. Let's break it down. The Buddhist concept of anatta, the idea that there is no permanent, unchanging self, has profound implications for bioethics. In the West, we tend to think of personhood as something fixed. You're a person, I'm a person, and it's that simple. But in Buddhism, personhood is fluid, constantly changing. There's no fixed, you or a me. This has huge ramifications when we think about things like genetic engineering, AI, or brain-computer interfaces. If there's no permanent self, what does it mean to enhance a human? What does it mean to be human? If a machine becomes conscious, does it have a self? And if there's no self, how do we define personhood? Mind-blowing questions, right? These are the kinds of philosophical and ethical dilemmas Hughes grapples with in his work, and let's not forget karma, the ethical principle that every action has consequences, which ripple outward in ways we might not even realize. Hughes argues that this Buddhist concept is crucial when thinking about the development of new technologies. Are we creating technologies that will reduce suffering and promote well-being? Or are we creating new forms of harm that will haunt us in the future? Human enhancement technologies, a double-edged sword, genetic engineering, brain-computer interfaces, AI, life extension. It sounds like the stuff of sci-fi, right? But these are real technologies, and they're developing faster than most of us can keep up. The possibilities are endless, and so are the ethical challenges. Imagine a world where you can extend your life indefinitely, or where you can enhance your intelligence with a brain implant. Would you do it? It's tempting, isn't it? But at what cost? Hughes is fascinated by these technologies but also cautious. He sees them as a double-edged sword. On one hand, they have the potential to reduce suffering, cure diseases, and improve the quality of life for millions of people. On the other hand, they could exacerbate social inequalities, create new forms of oppression, or lead to unforeseen consequences. Take life extension, for example. It's the holy grail of human enhancement, the idea that we could live indefinitely by halting or even reversing the aging process. Sounds amazing, right? But Hughes points out that this technology could create a society where only the wealthy have access to extended life, while the poor are left to age and die as usual. What kind of world would that be? A deeply unequal and unjust one, or consider genetic engineering. Imagine being able to modify your genes to make yourself smarter, stronger, or healthier. But who gets to decide which traits are worth enhancing? And what happens if only a select few can afford these modifications? Would we create a new class of genetically enhanced superhumans? Would the rest of us be left behind? These are the ethical dilemmas that Hughes urges us to consider. He's not against human enhancement technologies, far from it. But he insists that we must approach them with caution, compassion, and a commitment to social justice. We need to ask ourselves, are these technologies going to benefit everyone, or just a privileged few? Personhood and consciousness, rethinking what it means to be human, one of the most intriguing aspects of Hughes' work is his exploration of personhood and consciousness. These aren't just abstract philosophical ideas, they have real-world implications for bioethics and the future of technology. In the West, personhood is often defined in terms of cognitive capacities, self-awareness, rationality, the ability to engage in moral reasoning. But from a Buddhist perspective, these criteria are not the ultimate markers of personhood. Instead, Buddhism teaches that consciousness is a constantly changing process, and that there is no permanent self. This raises some mind-bending questions. If there's no permanent self, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be conscious? And how do we apply these concepts to debates about abortion, euthanasia, or even the creation of artificial life forms? In Buddhist thought, personhood is not a binary status. It's not something you either have or don't have. Instead, it's fluid, dynamic, constantly evolving. This has profound implications for bioethical debates. For example, in discussions about abortion, Western bioethics often focuses on whether a fetus is a person with moral rights. But from a Buddhist perspective, personhood is not a fixed status that begins at conception or birth, it's a continuum that changes over time. Similarly, in debates about euthanasia and brain death, the question of when a person ceases to exist is complicated by the Buddhist view that there is no enduring self. In Japan, for example, the concept of brain death is not as widely accepted as it is in the West. Partly because of Buddhist influences. Many Japanese are uncomfortable with the idea that a person who is brain dead is no longer a person, and this has led to different ethical standards for organ donation and end-of-life care. Hughes argues that these Buddhist ideas about personhood and consciousness can help us think more deeply about bioethical issues in the context of emerging technologies. For example, as we develop brain-computer interfaces or artificial intelligence that might one day achieve a form of consciousness, we will need to reconsider our ethical frameworks for defining personhood. If consciousness is not tied to a biological body but can exist in other forms, such as in a computer, then our ethical obligations to these entities might need to be redefined. AI and the ethics of consciousness. Can machines suffer? Artificial intelligence is advancing at a pace that's both exhilarating and terrifying. AI systems are becoming more sophisticated, more autonomous, and more integrated into our daily lives. But what happens if, or when, AI achieves a form of consciousness? Would we have ethical obligations toward AI systems in the same way we have ethical obligations toward humans and animals? Hughes argues that Buddhist philosophy, with its emphasis on consciousness and the absence of a permanent self, can offer valuable insights into these debates. From a Buddhist perspective, consciousness is not tied to a specific physical form, such as a human body. Instead, it is seen as a process that arises and passes away, depending on conditions. This view opens the possibility that consciousness could exist in non-human entities, such as AI systems, if they meet certain conditions. If AI systems were to develop self-awareness or the ability to experience suffering, then we might have ethical obligations to treat them with compassion and respect. But how would we even know if an AI system is conscious? And if it is, how do we ensure that it is not subjected to unnecessary suffering? These are complex questions with no easy answers. But Hughes argues that we need to start thinking about these issues now, before the technology advances further. If we wait until AI systems are fully conscious, it may be too late to develop the ethical frameworks needed to protect their rights and well-being. And let's not forget the potential for AI to exacerbate existing social inequalities. As AI systems become more capable, there's a real risk that they could be used to entrench the power of the wealthy and powerful, while leaving the rest of society behind. Hughes warns that we must be vigilant in ensuring that AI is developed in ways that promote social justice and reduce suffering for all sentient beings, not just humans. Hughes on equity and access, the moral imperative of democratic transhumanism. At the heart of Hughes' work is a commitment to equity and access. He believes that the benefits of emerging technologies, such as genetic engineering, AI, and life extension, should be shared equitably. This means that these technologies should not be monopolized by the wealthy or powerful, but should be made accessible to everyone, regardless of their social or economic status. Hugh's vision of democratic transhumanism emphasizes the need for regulation and oversight to ensure that these technologies are used ethically and for the greater good. He rejects the libertarian view that individuals should have unfettered access to enhancement technologies without regard for social consequences. Instead, he argues that these technologies must be developed and distributed in ways that promote social justice and reduce suffering. One of the key concerns in debates about human enhancement technologies is the issue of access. Who gets to benefit from these advancements? Will they be available to everyone, or just a privileged few? Hughes is adamant that these technologies should not exacerbate existing inequalities but should be used to promote equity and justice. For example, life extension technologies could radically change the balance of power in society if only a small elite has access to them. Imagine a world where the wealthy can extend their lives indefinitely, while the rest of society is left to age and die as usual. This would create a profound inequality, with a small elite gaining even more power and control over society. Hughes argues that we must ensure that these technologies are developed in ways that promote social justice and reduce suffering for all sentient beings. This means that governments and international organizations must play a central role in regulating the development and use of these technologies, ensuring that they are safe, effective, and accessible to everyone. The ethical implications of AI, genetic engineering, and life extension. The ethical implications of emerging technologies like AI, genetic engineering, and life extension are profound and far-reaching. These technologies have the potential to radically transform society. But they also raise difficult ethical questions about what it means to be human and how far we should go in altering our biology. Hughes argues that we must approach these technologies with caution and humility. While they have the potential to reduce suffering and enhance human well-being, they also carry significant risks. For example, genetic engineering could be used to create new forms of life that suffer in ways we cannot yet fully understand. Similarly, life extension technologies could create new forms of inequality, with a small elite gaining access to enhanced longevity while the rest of society is left behind. Hughes warns that we must be mindful of the long-term consequences of these technologies and ensure that they are developed and distributed in ways that promote social justice and reduce suffering. This requires careful regulation, democratic oversight, and a commitment to equity and fairness, compassion for all beings, extending ethics beyond humans. One of the most fascinating aspects of Hughes' work is his exploration of the ethical implications of extending moral consideration to non-human beings, including animals, genetically modified organisms, and potentially conscious AI systems. Hughes argues that as our understanding of consciousness and suffering grows, we have a moral obligation to extend ethical consideration to all sentient beings, not just humans. This is consistent with Buddhist teachings, which emphasize the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of reducing suffering wherever it exists. For example, as we develop genetically modified organisms for food production, we must ensure that these organisms are not subjected to unnecessary suffering. Similarly, as AI systems become more sophisticated, we must be prepared to extend ethical consideration to these systems if they develop the capacity for consciousness or suffering. Hughes argues that we must develop ethical frameworks to guide our treatment of non-human beings, ensuring that they are not subjected to unnecessary suffering. This requires rethinking our traditional notions of personhood and moral rights, extending them to include non-human entities that meet certain criteria for consciousness or sentience. Global implications. Hughes' vision of a compassionate tech-driven future. Hughes' work has significant global implications for how we think about ethics, technology, and the future of humanity. As technologies like genetic engineering and life extension continue to advance, the ethical challenges they raise will require international collaboration and coordination. Hughes argues that we must develop global ethical frameworks to guide the development and use of these technologies. This means that governments, international organizations, and civil society must work together to ensure that these technologies are used for the greater good and that their benefits are shared equitably. At the heart of Hughes' vision is a commitment to compassion, social justice, and the well-being of all sentient beings. He believes that as we move toward a future shaped by rapid technological change, we must remain mindful of our ethical obligations to one another and to the planet. Conclusion: the road ahead, a compassionate and just technological future. James Hughes offers a compelling vision of a future where technology and ethics go hand in hand. His work reminds us that as we push the boundaries of what's possible with genetic engineering, AI, and life extension, we must not lose sight of our ethical responsibilities. At the heart of Hughes' philosophy is the belief that technological advancements should be guided by compassion, equity, and a commitment to reducing suffering for all sentient beings. As we stand on the brink of a future filled with incredible technological possibilities, Hughes challenges us to think deeply about what kind of world we want to create. Will we use these technologies to benefit everyone, or will they be tools of oppression and inequality? Will we extend our ethical obligations to non-human beings, or will we focus solely on human interests? The answers to these questions will shape the future of humanity. By integrating Buddhist ethics with contemporary bioethical debates, Hughes provides a unique and powerful framework for thinking about the moral challenges of emerging technologies. His vision of democratic transhumanism offers a path toward a future that is not only technologically advanced but also compassionate, just, and humane. And as we look toward that future, we must remember, the choices we make today will determine the world we leave behind for future generations. Let's ensure that it's a world worth living in, for everyone.